shelters down. So next on the list is escaping. So they want to escape, and the best way to escape is to drive. Unfortunately, at Google, we have these plug-in cars, and Chris forgot to plug in the car. So the car doesn't work. So instead, they're going to use a kayak and go to Japan. Now, you may know that using our driving directions, you can actually get directions on kayak to other countries. So that was a little in-joke. This is using the driving directions to get to Japan. Anyway, nice little story. And of course, at the end, we wonder if it is, in fact, the end. Because I think Chris might have been bitten, and he's now going to bring zombieism to Japan. All right, so that's a little story. They tell you to tell a story when you're talking about when you're giving a talk. So that's part of my story. And the idea there was to show you a bunch of different things that you can use that you might not have thought about, and I might not have time to show you the details on. But you think about what we were doing in that. We were doing places search on categories based on what kinds of places. They were looking for costumes, costume shops, restaurants, and sporting goods stores. They were using check-in. They were using driving directions, walking directions, and styled maps, because the maps got, creepy. Okay, so that's a nice little encapsulated story. Let's talk to you about the broad spectrum of what the Geo APIs are. We have the Maps API version 3. This is sort of our flagship. This is the most important API. It's a JavaScript API that is designed to work in browsers, but also in mobile devices. I'm going to spend most of my time talking about this today. But we also have the Earth API, which allows you to load Google Earth in the browser. I will be showing you this as well. We have our Static Maps API. I don't think I'm going to get a chance to talk to you about this, but it's basically an image API. You can load it into browsers or environments where you don't have access to JavaScript, or where you want to use very low bandwidth applications. And I'm not going to be talking about this today, but we also have native SDKs on Android and iOS. Okay, so let's take a look at Maps API v3. This is, as I mentioned, our JavaScript API. It's our most fully featured Maps API, and it is, as far as we can tell, the most fully featured Maps API in the world. It's on 700,000 websites. It was actually the first JavaScript API for Maps, and it is still the most used web API in the world. It is optimized, the version 3 is optimized to use in both desktop and mobile browsers. Here's a list of all the browsers that we have support for. Somebody was asking me today, well, of course you don't support Internet Explorer. Well, of course we do. We support any JavaScript-enabled browser. And you'll see on the mobile browser, it actually includes BlackBerry 6 and the Dolphin 2, which is the Samsung Bada one. And of course, we support things like Opera and other of the more minor browsers. These are some of the features. I've highlighted things that I think we'll get to today. One thing I really want to highlight is we now have Maps API data for Israel. Thank you. Really, I'm kind of ashamed that we haven't before, but it's really not our fault. The Maps data providers, we just renegotiated the contract that allows us to do this. So we're really happy. The same data that you see on maps.google.com is now available in the Maps API for Israel. And as you can see, we have options for using it in JavaScript, in English transliterated or in Hebrew. This is actually a Chrome HTML5 demonstration, so this is a live demo, and I can actually drill in and show you that we have some pretty nice complete set of data. Okay, so I mentioned this one at the beginning. If you want to use the Maps API for maps in Hebrew, you just add to it a language. Oh, that didn't really come out. Languages equals IW. That's if you want to force it to use that. Typically, what will happen is it will pick up the language of the browser. So whatever browser that somebody is using, it will use that. If you want to force it to Hebrew, you say IW. If you want it transliterated into English as the default or whatever the default language is, you don't have to add a language parameter. So how many of you have developed Maps API applications before? Okay, great. So that looks like about half of you. Those of you who haven't, this is a required loader. So this is what tells the browser, load this map. By the way, we have one other loader for this, and that's actually the China one. If you want to use a China loader, come and ask me about it. Don't use it unless you're making applications just for China. Okay. I want to say one other thing. There's this parameter here, sensor equals false. Can either sensor equals false or true. It's a parameter that you must include, and that parameter says to us whether or not you are using a sensor to determine location on the map. It gives you absolutely no benefit to say true or false. It's just you telling us. And it's a requirement of our data providers. Our data providers require us to tell them, are you using a sensor to detect the location of the user? And if it's true, they charge us more. And if it's false, they charge us less. So regardless, it doesn't matter. Please be truthful. The reason I mention this is a lot of people copy sample code, but the sample codes usually say sensor equals true underscore or underscore false. And then they wonder why it doesn't load. So just putting that out there. Okay, so draggable directions. One of the new features in the Maps API that we launched in May is draggable directions. So say I want to go from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, I get driving directions. That's really cool. But if I make it draggable, then the user can actually decide to route through other locations. They can actually change their route, and it will actually dynamically change this route as well as this route and give you new driving directions. So that's something that we added to the Maps API fairly recently. And let's just take a look at the code for this. So this is your basic code for creating a directions renderer and service on the map. You create a Google Maps direction renderer and a Google Maps direction service. And this is your basic create a map code. This says, so basically from here to here is creating a map. So all you're saying is, here's the center of the map, here's some basic map options, here's where you go. And then put it in this DOM element, passing in the options. Then you say directions display, which is this renderer. You set it onto the map. And then the directions display, you also set the panel, that is the side panel that gives the text of the driving directions. You put that into this DOM element, and then you add a listener that says when it's changed, do something. Oh, and sorry, you're giving a renderer the options draggable true. That's the simple part. What I really wanted to show you was the whole, here's how you do directions. Now, you may have noticed that one of the options on the sample was to change the type of directions. Where we have it, we will give you bicycling directions, but we have almost everywhere walking directions. So you can see you can actually get walking directions from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. If you really want to walk, what is it? Almost 15 hours. So that's more useful, obviously, within a city, but still, you know, I don't know, you're really in shape. Clearly, I'm not the guy who would do that. Okay, drawing tools. So this is the last major feature that was available in version 2 of our API. We just released it. It's so new, actually, that we don't have the documentation up. We announced it at GDD Sydney. We haven't posted it anywhere else. But the idea here is that you can actually give people tools to draw on your map. So you see up here, there's a set of tools here, a point, a polygon, a line, a box, and a circle. And just by some simple code, you can add that to the map, and I can start to create a box. Now, why is this useful? What this is useful for is, say you want to get information from your users. You want to do something like say, okay, I'm not going to tell you where something is. You tell me where something is. So it's great for user-generated content. You can also use this for something like you could create a query based on it. You could say, okay, I want to figure out where all the earthquakes are in this bounding box. And you can have them actually build in separate bounding boxes. You can have them, say, drop a point and say, okay, give me everything within a 50-meter radius. There's a lot of uses that you could use for this. Now, there's a lot of third-party tools. People have written these kind of libraries for themselves. But now we provide this feature directly within the API. So basically, what happens is as soon as something is completed, it sends an event, triggers an event that is sent back to your application. You do something with that. You send it to your server, whatever you do. OK. So I don't have the code for that. So yes?
Can you modify the shapes? Drag them, resize them?
Yes. Let me show you an example here. I don't know why I'm having a little trouble dragging it at this point. But yeah, you see where it's creating these little shaded ones in between. Those are ones that you can then click on and drag. And yeah, you can do that. So what it will return to you is an encoded polyline, which you could then decode and turn into to KML either on your server or within your client. Yes? Yeah, it really depends on the browser, what it will support. In the native clients, it's not supported. If it's on a browser that's running on a device, it depends on whether that browser passes through your click events and yeah. Not currently, no, but that's a good feature request. Thank you. We have a very active Maps API feature request forum. So if you find something that you don't like, find somebody else who also doesn't like it and star their issue, or if you're the first one, add that in. Our engineers look at that a lot, and my team, the developer relations team, looks at that a lot and advocates on your behalf. Okay, so the next thing is Street View. So we have Street View in the API. It's actually very simple to turn on. You just drop in an option, Street View true, when you're creating the map. And for those of you who don't know, we already have announced plans for doing Street View here in Israel. We also have Street View available, of course, around the world. What's different in version 3 of the Maps API is that it's an HTML JavaScript version, which means that it'll work on any mobile device that supports HTML and JavaScript, unlike our previous version, which was Flash. And as you know, Flash for mobile has been discontinued. Adobe's discontinued the development of that. So we really committed to the HTML5 JavaScript implementations here. What I want to show you here, these are what we support. We have overlays, custom imagery, and we have a Street View data service, which allows you to query and say, is there actually Street View in this area? What I'm going to do here is show you custom Street View. So this was taken, panorama object taken with an ICS, ice cream sandwich phone. So ice cream sandwich is going to come with a panorama phone, a panorama camera on it. which is actually pretty cool. And my colleague Dan Galpin took this, and this is Shanghai. We were in Shanghai together. He took this, he sent me the imagery. I put it into Street View. So you can see here, nice panorama. It didn't take a 100% panorama, so you'll see there's actually a little discontinuation between them there. But I can also see the Forbidden City in Beijing, and these are some Olympic stadiums that were created for the Olympics in 2008. These panoramas are all just running on this demo. So when you give us these photos, it's just running within your Maps API application, doesn't become part of the general Street View imagery. I wanted to show you stuff from China to show you, we can't drive streets in China. That's possibly never going to happen, right? But we do have the ability to let you render Street View in China or wherever. There's a great sample. If I have time, I will show you where somebody put together Grand Theft Auto 4 Liberty City, did it completely in Street View. They drove all the streets, hundreds of hours of gameplay going into this, right? Panoramic photos, it's beautiful. It's an awesome demo. Okay, so you remember the loader that I showed you before? This is an example of loading in some additional libraries. Now, one of the things that we did to make Maps API load on mobile devices and be fast on mobile devices is we modularized it. So we said, only load the code that you need. But everything that was basic, that was core to the API, like the map, the marker, we had to put in little hooks to allow you to have additional, to allow you to get to it quickly. And then as we started adding things, we thought, well, why don't we add it in such a way that it's completely modularized, so you don't know anything about it if it's not there. So we added libraries. So what libraries are is when you load the loader, you add in this libraries parameter. Right now we have these 4 libraries. We have Panoramio, which is panoramic photos. Geometry, a geometry library, which gives you some utilities for calculating things. AdSense, which is for putting AdSense on your map, ads, making money. Who wants to make money on their map? Okay, not too many of you. Come on, what's wrong with you guys? Sorry, those of you who are altruistic. And then places. And what I'm going to show you today is some places stuff. The places library. Okay. Now what places is we have, if you go to maps.google.com and you search on pizza when you're looking at Tel Aviv, it's going to show you a bunch of pizza places. You click on more info, it actually will tell you about that pizza place. Say there's Joe's Pizza in Tel Aviv. And I always use pizza because, I like to eat. So you load the places library, and it gives you some really interesting things. It gives you an autocomplete and this places search service that searches through millions of places that we have around the world to give you information. Okay, so let me give you it's better to show in demo. So autocorrect, autocomplete is what this demo shows, but let's just take a look here. Actually, I'm going to reload it because it's faintly cool. All right, I don't know if you saw that, but all the markers dropped in and they bounced when they hit. You can do that now in the API. That's pretty simple to do. So you see it right here. We're looking at this area, not quite Tel Aviv. Looking here. Okay, so we got a bunch of places in Jerusalem. So that's cooler. You see there, it's dropping in the places. Really nice. Okay. And what we're doing is we're searching over all of them, but we can also do a restrict, so we're just looking at, say, lodging, hotels, motels. So you see we have lots of places in Tel Aviv, lots of places in Jerusalem, and I can click on an individual place, and it will tell me what the place is called, and then I can actually click on and get the place data. So what I'm doing is I'm doing searches that are based on context, I'm doing searches that are based on category. We've also added in searches that are based on context category keyword search. Now, autocomplete does some really nice things. Now, say I'm looking at this map here, and I say TEL. I type in TEL. It's going to give me this list of things that start with TEL. Now, not only is it doing this, obviously Tel Aviv is a classic example of a place that starts with TEL, but not only is it doing that, showing us some nice list of things, it's context sensitive. So say I go to San Francisco. I'm going to go to San Francisco. Oh, sorry. Go to San Francisco. And I'm going to load up the places. And now I'm going to type in TEL, and I don't get Tel Aviv. It's doing context-sensitive search. It's looking at what the map is looking at and saying, okay, you're giving me the map, this map, these are the map boundaries. I'm going to search on places that are relevant to that location. So that's context-sensitive autocomplete. Now, why is autocomplete important? Autocomplete is important for a couple of reasons. One is lots of people don't know what they're searching for. They don't actually know the name of the thing. They might just know what it starts with or one word that's in it. Say they type in restaurant, it'll show them some restaurants that are around their location. The other reason is if they're on a mobile device, typing is hard, right? I mean, let's face it, I hate to type on the mobile device. You have to do a small little thing, you got big thumbs, whatever. Places autocomplete allows them to autocomplete that request. Okay. So we also have some web services. Pretty much all of our, not all of it, pretty much all of our services are actually available in both the JavaScript API and web services, which allows you to access the information from the web service directly on your server. Now, if it's in JavaScript, of course, it's all happening in the browser. On the server, if you want to do some computation, present your results in an appropriate manner to the user, then you can call a web service directly. So we have a bunch of web services here. We've got elevation, places, directions. So elevation is, what's the elevation of this particular point? What's the altitude? That's pretty cool. Places, as I've described, and then in detail I've got here. Directions, so driving directions. You can also do route optimization through the Directions API. Distance matrix, which is basically saying, take a set of 10 different places. Say I want to start at one place, go through 20 other places, and find another place, and end up at another place. What's the fastest route between all of those things? So you saw that during the zombie apocalypse when they were finding the costume shop and the restaurant. And then geocoding, which is taking an address and turning it into latitude and longitude. Or reverse geocoding, which is taking a latitude and longitude, turning it into an address. And I'll get to your question in a second. Now with places, we actually add in a few additional services here. Add and delete, events, and check-in. So add and delete allow you to add places to the Places API. So if you're running a service that allows people to check into some place or to search on places, and they find a place that's closed, it's no longer there, they can tell you that, and then you can delete it, and it will never show up in your application again. And then in a few weeks, Google will have moderated and decided whether you're correct, and it shows up in other people's applications. And the same with add. If one of your users finds a new restaurant, they can add that. You can tell us about it, and then it shows up right away in your search. And then we have a check-in application, which allows you to have your user say, I was here. It's completely anonymous. It doesn't give us any information. It's basically just a counter. And that means for your application, when you're doing a search, your users will be more likely to see that place again the more people show up. You have a question?
When you give driving directions, do you take traffic into account?
Not currently, no. We don't. Well, we used to do that on maps.google.com, and we had to take it down because of we weren't getting the best results that we want. It is something that we're really interested in doing. I cannot make you any promises that it will happen. Yes?
Check-in is somehow connected to the latitude check-in, or
It's completely different. It's completely anonymous. It's for you if you want to write a check-in application. And we don't collect any user data at all. Okay. Let me reload this. I'm running a little bit low on time, so I'm going to skip this particular demo, I think, and go to this one. We also have the Google Earth API, which relies on a Google Earth plugin. And what this can do is give you the ability to load Google Earth into the browser. You get the full 3D experience. Actually, I changed my mind. I'm going to go back to this one here. Get a full 3D experience in the browser. And that includes things like going to San Francisco. So you get that nice smooth zoom in there. If I tilt the Earth, I'm going to get you can see I get actual terrain there. I can turn that off or back on. So I get the little mountains in the distance. I can turn on roads and borders. I can turn on 3D buildings. Basically, anything you can do in Google Earth, including trees. Yes, trees. We auto-detected trees. We went through satellite imagery and detected not only where trees were, but what kinds of trees there were. And we've detected, and it's pretty cool, also kind of silly, 80 million trees around the world. We're adding in more. We think there's probably 3 billion trees. So we put in different little sprites that represent the different trees. You get in close and you see there. Unfortunately, they're not clickable, so I can't actually tell you what kind of trees there are. But that would be pretty cool. We also added Street View to the Earth API. And it's not jumping into Street View here. There we go. Which gives you a completely different Street View experience within the API. Okay. We also have historic imagery, which lets you change the clock on when what imagery is there. So you can see the most current imagery that we have. We also can go back in time. I'm going to, for instance, go back to 1946. We have some aerial imagery from 1946 in San Francisco. Some places of the world, we actually have imagery that goes back to 1930s. So that's pretty cool. And I actually have a quick set of code for that. Again, it's all very simple here. You're setting controls that set whether the historical imagery is enabled, true or false, whether the time control is on, and then you're creating timestamps on both the lookats and the points so that they're controlled by the control. The last thing I think that I have on here is Fusion Tables. So how many of you know what Fusion Tables is? Okay, not very many. Let me give you a quick tour. If you're in Google Docs, you could go to google.com/fusiontables. It'll take you to Google Docs. You can actually create a Fusion table now in Google Docs. Fusion Tables is basically a database in our application space. It's designed to allow you to do quick and easy visualizations. So let me show you. This is a table. This is a Fusion table. This is internet usage in China, according to government statistics. I'm looking at internet penetration. And I have within that, so you see there's a province name on the left side, and then some columns of data. And I actually have in here I get to it, I'm just scrolling over to the right to find, there we go, KML. So you can upload to Fusion Tables CSV files, text files, KML files, Google Spreadsheets, Excel, Open Document spreadsheets, these basic tabular forms, and then KML. And KML allows you to do quick and easy mapping. So I can just go visualize map. And, location KML 4326. And that's moving a little bit slowly. Anyway, the point is that that allows you to do some very quick visualizations. You can also do intensity maps, bar charts, a bunch of other things. And you can then embed those directly in your web page. So this is actually, an embedded web page. So I was here. I can click on, there we go. Sorry, that one just took a little bit while to load. So I created this within the map application, and then I colored each polygon based on the internet usage penetration, percentage of the population that had it. And then you can click on Get Embedded Link, and you have a map that you can place inside. But you can also, there's a Fusion Tables layer that you can add directly to a Maps API application. That allows you to render your apps in Fusion Tables, in a Maps API application, you can render in a Fusion table. So then you can do fun things like query it. So this is population of countries in the European Union. And you'll see that some of the countries are highlighted, and according to the slider down at the bottom, highlighted the populations between 10,000 and between 0 and 10 million. And I can actually slide that and dynamically change. Sorry, my demo decided to crash here. All right. Anyway, the point being that you can programmatically interact directly with your Fusion table. So you can add your Fusion table layer to your Maps API application and then query it based on certain parameters within your application. Yes?
It's rendered immediately in real time, or it's like loading first the data and then just...
It might take a moment to load. One of the advantages of Fusion Tables is that it loads it as a raster image. So you can render up to 100,000 rows on top of your map. It might take a moment to actually render it because the image has to be created server side. One slight disadvantage is sometimes it will cache that image for several minutes. So for real time, you have to send it a fake query. I'm not supposed to tell you to do that. We'll edit that out of the video.
If I update the document, does it automatically triggers the map to get updated?
Yes, the map will trigger to update. It'll update the image when it's called next, but it will cache that image for a few minutes first. So send it a fake query. You want to ask me about that later. Okay, so I'm running out of time, and I actually have a guest speaker. So if I can call them up to the stage, my guest speakers up to the stage from Daronet. Now, we're really excited because Daronet is actually here. They have a booth outside, and we like to have them up. Okay, so would you like the... Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
And I'll take questions later. Thank you.
So, can you hear me? We just wanted to show you some case study that we did with the new API using Daronet tools. Okay, I want to tell you about the organization that's called Access Israel. the organization is just to place, the organization is non-governmental organization, and it's supposed to make Israel a better place. We want to point the places that are that we can find facilities for disabilities and accessibilities. Okay, this is the website, aisrael.org. And what we did together, our target was to show over the map all the places that we can find accessible places for handicapped pupils, like parkings, some kind of businesses that we can get, cafes, toilets, and other facilities. We have 2 points of integration. First one is the website itself, and the other is a mobile application that you can find nearby places using your mobile device. So what we did is customize UI, like Mana showed before. We threw hundreds of markers over the place. Of course, we customized the icons, and we had smart info windows. This is the small window that showing the place data. And the last thing is we sync the map dynamically according to the database and according to what you're using. Just an example how it shows. You can search for places around the map, and you can see the little spot to know where the disabilities facilities you can find. Okay. Our next step, and this is what we're building now, is mobile application to find nearby places for disabilities, to report non-accessible places, even if they're saying they are, and to enlarge the database, use a social plugin, to use the check-in API. We want to enlarge the database, obviously to send statistics to the government and where it needs. And the last one is just to capture photos for people that park in handicapped parking people, and to send it to the appropriate places. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job. Okay, so I'm placed these slides online if you want to get access to them. That's the URL. I'm sure that'll be published later. If you want to follow me, you can. I'm on Google Plus and Twitter. I'm also on Facebook, but I don't really care. I don't know, is the next speaker here? I don't actually know when I'm supposed to end at this point because we're time shifted. I think I can take a couple of questions, and then we can, if you want to find me later, you can ask me later. So any questions for me? Yes?
I'm using the distance matrix web service.
Yes.
And I noticed that there's a limit on the number of elements that you can get back per day. It stands around 2,500.
That's right.
Is there a plan to raise this limit?
Well, there is a way to raise the limit already. And there's a number of our web services have a limit of 2,500 calls per day. In the case of the distance matrix, that's one of them. If you get the Google Maps API Premier, we can bump that up to 100,000 calls a day.
What's the problem with the pricing plan of the...
Yes. So we've looked at the fact that there's a problem that the Maps API Premier tends to cost a lot more. That's true. We understand that. And right. We're looking at that problem. So yes.
Where did you gather the historical data?
The satellite imagery data. A lot of sources. We've actually been buying satellite imagery for a while. We're still doing it. All the satellite companies have lots of it. There's also open public domain things that are out there. Sorry? In some cases, we've had government. I can think of, say, British Columbia. I know that we have that. I'll say in Israel, there's a U.S. law that prevents us from doing good satellite imagery here in Israel. If you want, you can look that up on the internet. We have a search engine that will help you find it. So, okay, I can take one more question and then, yes? Can you write from a database to the Fusion Tables? Yes, Fusion Tables has its own API. It's an SQL-based API that does your basic create, read, update, and delete operations. So you can. It uses OAuth 2 for authentication. It's very simple. Yes? So the question is, if you want to put Fusion Tables on a Maps API application, do you have to make it downloadable or viewable? You have to make the table public, unless you have Maps API Premier, which allows you to then use a private table. You can mark it so that it's not downloadable, but that people will still be able to use it within Fusion Tables, within other tables, and they could go in and copy and paste your data out of it, theoretically. But you can make it non-downloadable.